activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat.
Or a retiree who fell ill and had to
choose between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America, this is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Blackshirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
Good morning. We're back live. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Will help you with all your needs from concussions. They do stuff for cancer screenings, and obviously for me, they have done a lot with my lower body and back issues, and will continue. You know what the funny thing about Advanced Medical Imaging is? They probably got a friendship and a partnership that they didn't plan on. It's like one of those things, Harrison, that like, you go one time and then they're like, "What you doing back here?" I was like, "Well, you guys treated me so good, I'm going to keep coming for a whole bunch of stuff." And they got a surprise coming here pretty soon. So, anyways, I appreciate their support and their partnership, because Inside the Huddle is going to start to really grow 2024, I think. And I know there's some things coming down the pipe potentially that's going to be pretty good for Inside the Huddle, pretty good for Old School, really good for the ticket, and they're really good for people that will be listening. So be on the lookout for that. And but we got a little bit of what the first segment we'll jump into, maybe a season recap. Considering you get a week to kind of let it, fester or whatever. And then we had championship weekend just last night. And it's, the people that are in the committee that
was the worst case scenario for the committee. That's a tough one.
Everybody I can guarantee you the preseason rankings, if Louisville won, they would have been top 10 next year. They're like 23 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jeff Brom, and you know what? That's kind of how his teams were at Purdue. Get on the cusp, and they went to the Big Ten championship, and then they just doo-doo down their leg, rightfully so, right? And then they went in the bowl game against a depleted LSU team and got obliterated. I mean, to the point that LSU cleared everybody off the bench by the second quarter. But anyways, back to the Huskers. Obviously, we would rather be having the Inside the Huddle where they're getting ready to go bowling. That did not happen. 13-10 loss to Iowa. Unfortunate. It was kind of just a, I think like the first 8, I think it was like 2 seasons or 3 seasons for this team. I felt like the first 4 games, and you could even probably say it was 4 seasons. I guess I'll restate that. I think it was 4 seasons, right? And I think the first 2 games was a kind of mini season in itself, right? That's 2 road games. Probably not the best case scenario in your first game as, new head coach, new regime, a new team, and you go on the road to a more buttoned up version of potentially what yourself is, that it with established program on the road on a Thursday night, and then you turn around and go into the Hornets' nest with the same scenario, maybe times 12, to be honest with you. So that was a season in itself to where, people probably were turning on the Minnesota game preseason wise, thinking wise that, Minnesota will beat us. Minnesota was one of the favorites potentially. This was a year for PJ Fleck. Obviously, go up there. Nebraska played well. And then expectations just instantly changed. Like, oh, man, we actually look physical. We actually look, especially on defense, and special teams, made some big hits, and the ability to kind of handle adversity, which has obviously been something that kind of has been, an issue. So you're like, man, actually, some tangible assets that what Coach Rule and those guys are talking about is there. Now, obviously, the offense struggled, end up losing, going to Colorado. You couldn't have started that first drive any better, right? And then you go in and then you have a well-known, fundamental mistake, letting it just lay there, and then you come back again, and you miss the field goal. But again, you could take positives out of it, and you could say, okay, this was not the ideal scenario. Nobody pictured Colorado to be a ranked team by then, right? And the darling of college football. So if there was ever a scenario that's not ideal for Nebraska to start, that was it. So, all right, that's the first part of the season, right? It's kind of the learning process, and you can't get any worse than this. You know what I mean? Just think of how you start 0-2, but you're like, okay, and then you got 2 winnable games, and then you have your next 4 games, I say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, you rebound. And then you knew, okay, let's see how they deal with success, and let's see how they deal with a really, really, obviously, probably the best team in the nation, even back then. And Michigan took them to the woodshed. But then you came away from that game of like, you know what? That's not the team that we saw that was 2-2.
Yeah, that's when we had that Sunday practice
Sunday
story.
practice
real
story.
Big
And
deal.
you know what?
Mm-hmm.
What we said, obviously we're not coaches, and but what everybody saw for like the naked eye perspective was true. Matt Rule just say, hey, listen, I didn't see you guys hit anybody. You probably are fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do this again. Right? And we're going to do it again with the game on Friday on the road and before a bye week. It took some big cojones to do that. And I think that was again, that was a part of the second season that I say, which was a kind of a turning point, right? And then you go on the road and in Champaign at Illinois. I always say they're sleepy Friday night games. Nebraska obviously has the ghost of the past of playing at Illinois and not playing well. And you go out there and kind of sleepwalk the first drive on defense, goal line stand. You feel like, okay, the game's over. Or not the game's over, but we have control of the game. Go on the bye week, 3-2. And it's like, okay, are we going to see something out, something a little bit different? And this is along the lines of essentially playing a quarterback that hadn't played since high school. A quarterback that really hadn't been coached since high school.
Yeah, I mean, he started the season out with a catch.
Yeah, true. But I'm saying always back there, you had Mark Whipple that just refused to even talk to him and told him you shouldn't even be here and all that. I mean, just and not even coaching him. So you got to think you're coaching yourself. He was the year even before that. You're on scout team. You're not really in the mix, rightfully so, because we had Adrian. And then there you go. He provided a spark, and next thing you know, you're 5-3. That's the third season, and went undefeated in October for the first time, and I don't know how long, which seems weird because I'll tell you what, Harrison. Some of the like small benchmarks that they're getting right now is like these were just the things that were just we would just roll out of the bed and be able to do this, right? And so you have to change your perspective because where the program is right now is a byproduct of some decisions, maybe even as long as 20 some years ago. And then you have everything teed up to where you could actually reach your immediate goal, which was the bowl game, and then maybe really cause some havoc and be a really special year.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously it goes without saying you go 0-4 in November, and then now we're here. And then how do you evaluate the season? So I think this season is just a byproduct really of that last game, Iowa, right? Started out a little slow, right? Especially offensively, got it going. Defense took it over. Some mistakes there, then situational football, and didn't take advantage of the opportunity. And then we it was a learning process, right? Clock management. If you're, I think one of the receivers wasn't on, and then we had to burn a timeout. That's a personal choice. I figured, the easy thing is, I think what people always try to do, blame the coaches. What Harrison, if we're in, it's just like today. We can communicate.
Yeah, that's high school level stuff.
Right. We
That's
can,
on the
like
player
me
to
and
look
you
at
can
the rep
communicate.
and
Hey,
figure
Harrison,
out,
you're
yeah.
here? Are you here? Yes, I'm here. Okay, I'm walking in. Like, it's almost game time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, the coach. You should never have to. I'm not calling that one coach.
Right. So it's like if we're about to go on air
mentally.
and I know we're about to go on somewhere around 7 and 7:05, I'm like, oh man, you know what? I'm gonna run up and get a tank of gas. Or I'm at the gas station at 6:59.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a producer problem or something like that. So if I decide to go into Pete Ferguson's show at 8:15, that's not that's on me, the person that's actually doing it or didn't do it. And so I think it was just a microcosm of the, kind of a snapshot of dealing with success, dealing with the big moments, dealing with the realistic big moments, and actually taking a type of championship mentality in a scenario of reaching the expectation that you should. And what I mean with dealing with like success is everybody's patting you on the back. It can become a like Nick Saban says, it could be like rat poison, where you can take it and then the next thing you know, you kill yourself. And then also dealing with expectations in the sense of, okay, we're here. Now we expect you guys to actually go a little bit farther. And sometimes it's a scenario of not really being familiar and dealing with a lot of adversity as far as like some guys that they were counting on, end up being not only hurt but injured the whole year, out for the whole year. And then some guys that are thrust into the limelight, and everything can like move so fast, and you can kind of be out there like playing and you're still kind of like, oh man, I'm really out here.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to think like, okay, I guess then I could tell you is, when I started as a redshirt freshman, I was a starter. I was just out there really trying to make my plays and not really mess up to where people would probably be talking about me, on Sundays or
come to talk shows.
Yeah. Or in the Daily Nebraskan or something, back when we had that paper. And then as you go along, then it's like, okay, I really feel like I'm out here now. I'm gonna really go out here and really ball out. And we had a little bit of that. And then next thing you know, you're in a moment, and then boom, you make a, game-changing play, something that didn't happen. You miss a tackle that you normally probably have made 10 times or, numerous times out the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how did I miss that tackle? Well, you missed the tackle because of the different scenarios. And if you're not used to being in that scenario through practice or just through your mental training on your own, you could get out there and like Mr. Ghost 30 says, the moment could be too big. And so, I think overall, I think, I could say that the 5-7 season was a decent start. I'd say if it was like it was a C, it wasn't it was kind of like maybe like where a lot of people predicted. We did it thing. People were everywhere for here in the station, anywhere from 4 to 7, 8 wins, and everything was predicated on health. And, we could, I would have expected to get 6 wins, especially with the scenario of the teams and how they played. And so, probably didn't reach the ultimate goal, obviously, but I think it's in a really good place in the sense of fundamentals are being taught. They're getting coached. I think they have a young coaching staff that's learning a lot from Matt Rule. And that's right. I mean, he knows that, right? I mean, look, Matt Rule he's 47, 48 years old. But he's been a young coach before.
Yeah.
So he knows what these guys are going through. So he's not expecting. So I think Dvorak is like 29 years old, right? I mean, that's a young dude be coaching.
Yeah,
right?
everyone talks about McGuire, but Dvorak's not that much older.
Well, they're right there with each other.
Uh-huh.
I mean, 24 and 20. I mean, 24 and 20. There isn't a big. I mean, there is 5 years difference, but you still wet behind the ears.
Mhm.
And the thing is, that's good in the sense of he sees unique qualities in them beyond this year. I'm assuming. I'm not anything I say. I'm not speaking from Matt Rule. I'm just speaking from experience of being around young coaches and a couple times being coached by a young coach. And the reason why I have like real scenario like experience with it, because when I was in Houston, we had a young coach by the name of Jed Fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was an offensive guy by trade. Vic Fangio and more importantly, excuse me, Dom Capers saw something in him as a young coach. Because on the other side, we had our offensive quality control was it Brian Dable and the other guy that was up there in Baltimore that when Lamar Jackson really got started. Those were our two offensive quality control coaches, right? So we can't, you know what I mean? And then our other defensive quality control coach was Tony Oden. You know what he's doing right now? He's a defensive back coach for the New York Jets. So we had Jed Fish. And if people you don't know who Jed Fish is, he is now the head coach of one of the hottest teams in America, the Arizona Wildcats. So when you have older coaches, which Don Capers and those guys more see somebody, you go through the mud with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there was times, man, I'm telling you, as a defensive assistant coach, I saw Dom and Vic raise the roof on Jed. I was like, dang. I was like, Jed, you'll be all right, man. He's like, yeah, I know. I gotta do better. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that, so I think that's where they're at. And I think I think next year I can only assume that, you're used to the magnitude of here in Nebraska. You're used to the pressure. You're hopefully used to how you're supposed to operate in like outside of the university, that this thing is a lot bigger than you can even imagine when you first came up here, and they'll be able to just hit the line run and come in the spring. And obviously they're in recruiting season right now. And so there's some tangible positives that you don't necessarily see because everybody can just be fixated on the wins and losses. So he's trying to really build a program that's hopefully sustainable. That's why he said it's a build, not a rebuild. And so you're kind of systematically building it up. But everybody's aware of next year the scenario is a lot more intense, and that's the way it should be. You shouldn't run away from expectations. You shouldn't be worried about not reaching them. You should be just worried about reaching them. Doing the thing. You should be actually trying to exceed the expectations, right? Always, be very humble. Under promise, over deliver is always a good thing. And Coach Osborne told us, and so I think if there ever was a scenario that you can't, I think it's a good time to self-evaluate. You got a lot of roster issues right now, and the stuff you got to think about, and then you got to get into recruiting, finish out the class, and that's your bowl game, really. But there is no off time, and it's not just I'm not just talking about the coaches, but it's the players. If I was a player on that team, I might take this week off, not fully, but I'm gonna get back into it, not to the magnitude, but I'm trying to gain an edge because. If I'm a defensive player, yeah, we had a good year. We were a good defense, right? A good defense. We got to be a great defense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you want an example, and then we'll go to break here, is like a great defense this year in the Big Ten was Iowa. A pathetic offense, but a great defense that kept them in the game to where they didn't get obliterated and embarrassed.
Well, I mean, they only gave Michigan 20 yesterday.
Right.
Or not 20, 26. I think it's
26,
yeah.
and you got to think. They had a 90-yard punt return, and essentially just gave them the ball on the 2-yard line. So that's 7 points off of it. They literally play with their backs against the wall from play one to the last play.
Yeah, and 27 seems like it might still seem like a lot, but you consider the fact the offense is 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and that's all you give up.
Yeah,
like that's next level.
The amount of pressure that they had to play because there is no mistake, and it's a physical game, and that they have everything to play for, and they want to pass the eye test, meaning Michigan has more incentive to beat the brakes off of you than to kind of just get through the game. So that's what the Nebraska should be shooting for, and then some. And that's only going to get there with guys taking self-evaluation, accountability. So it is what it is. There was a lot of positives. I would say there's more positives than negatives, but we got to obviously address some of the negatives, and that's what they're doing, I'm assuming, right now. So we're going to take our break, go into championship weekend, because I think it's it's going to be a conversation, because I think it comes out at 12. Is it around 12?
So it's new. Is it Eastern time? I know it's noon. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if it's noon. If it's Eastern time when that is, we'll double check here.
Yeah,
but it is
well,
today.
by the time
Today, 11 noon.
before tip off, before Nebraska beats Creighton on Sunday, and I implore everybody to get down there and beat Creighton, or to be down there and cheer on Nebraska beat Creighton. We'll know who's in there, and it will be a topic of discussion all day today and the rest of the week. So I'm going to break. Inside the Huddle, Jay Foreman, Advanced Medical Imaging. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them?
By their clothes,
Their age.
the way they speak.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
A child's learning doesn't just happen in a classroom. It happens wherever they are, all day, every day. What you teach your child at home is every bit as important as what they learn in school. Talk to your child about your family, your history, the food you eat, the holidays you celebrate, and the values that are important to you. Tolerance, honesty, respect. Remember, you are your child's first and most important teacher.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Don't be surprised if your kids seem bored when they have some time off from school. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. While kids may not miss the confinement of the classroom, they may miss the routine of the school day. Help them add some structure to those free days by planning special projects. Rearrange a bedroom, plan a family meal, increase that batting average, and keep it fun.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professional skills and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit serve.nebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity
not to make friends, but just to get something to eat?
or a retiree who fell ill and had to
Choose between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Don't be surprised if your kids seem bored when they have some time off from school. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. While kids may not miss the confinement of the classroom, they may miss the routine of the school day. Help them add some structure to those free days by planning special projects. Rearrange a bedroom, plan a family meal, increase that batting average, and keep it fun.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We're back, Advanced Medical Imaging. Inside the Huddle brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Especially slowing down a little bit for holidays. Make sure you get in there because, I've had a little bit of trouble getting there. I should be. I feel I'm going to talk to Dr. Raz and Dr. Roz and Dr. Finn. I need a VIP line.
I can definitely set that up
Yeah,
for you. You're there enough.
I need a VIP line. But we're back. Championship weekend is over and done. I'm sure the college football playoff committee has not had an ounce of sleep, an hour of sleep. They're probably. It's going to be a matter of hours here, and you'll probably start to hear about it on Twitter. I'm sure they leak stuff magically. I don't know how they get out of there. They have little birdies in there, but
I think that's like an overnight thing where like there's no way you watch all of college football last night and everyone just goes home, thinks about it, and then they meet back up in the morning.
I'm sure I'm sure when the last game that was obviously the Florida State Louisville game ended, they had to have discussions like in between each other. They're all in a room, Yeah,
in the war.
They're like a jury. They're getting Uber Eats or whatever. You got to have those discussions, and so I'm sure those different scenarios weren't concrete, as far as decision made before the game, but I'm sure some things were made. I'm sure they got, all right, it's a unanimous Michigan's number one.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. I'm sure it's potentially a unanimous Washington's in there at a 2 or 3. Most likely it should be 2. Then it gets funky, right? So just for everybody, Washington was able to do one of the things that's the hardest thing to do. 1, be undefeated. Number 2, beat a really good Oregon team, not once but twice, and beat them the second time handily compared to the first time. Because when they played earlier in the year, I felt like Dan Lanning lost that game by going for it for 4th down on 3 times inside field goal range, 0 for 3. They end up looking by 3.
Yeah, that was kind of a bizarre game for Oregon, where if you want to talk about when calling it aggressive over and over again goes wrong, like that was a game where it looks like you're watching NCAA football, the way they just kept going for it.
I felt like that first Oregon Washington game, he called it like he was playing PlayStation.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I know I'm going to play again, right? Or we're going to play again, or it's not that big a deal. But I think it was a big deal because anytime you lose, it's a loss. And the way they lost.
Well, that was the thing too, Joe. It's like you're dealing with a guy in Michael Penix Jr. on the other side, where I don't know how many more opportunities you want to give. If you're playing Nebraska, like I might get it.
Yeah, you can play like that.
Yeah,
right.
But
You can
like
play
a
with
Washington
house money.
team with a possible Heisman candidate, like you don't want to be giving that guy multiple opportunities.
Right, and 3 NFL receivers. Yeah, and a dude that's been throwing darts for the last 2 years. It probably wasn't smart, but they end up beating Oregon again, 34-31. It wasn't that close, so I think they should be the number 2 or number 3. They definitely should be in. And things got a little funky because you heard it earlier on the black shirt. Terrell Farley was the first one. Me and him talked, outside of being on air. We all thought like Oklahoma State could beat Texas. Mike Gundy wins Bedlam. If there's ever a Mike Gundy scenario to send Texas off, and he's done really well against Sark, was that Texas said no. And Texas, look, go down there to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, regardless of I don't think they'd beat Alabama right now, but they beat Alabama on the road and by a double-digit victory and to be pretty dominant. This is what Texas is. I hate to say it, back in a different Texas team. That game yesterday was usually a game that Texas would just squander. They just came out on a mission and destroyed Oklahoma State. So that, where do they go? They were 7 before. Do they leapfrog, right? And obviously Oregon losing helps. And then obviously, then we go to the Bama game. Bama's 8. And what people need to understand about the college football playoffs, they just rank them like new rankings every week. So even though Bama's 8 and they beat the number 1 team, they still could jump in there at 4, right? And it would, I'm telling you, the powers that be, which is essentially who's had the stronghold on the national championships, which is Greg Sankey, the commissioner at SEC, and essentially Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and teams like LSU and all them, and let's say Paul Finebaum, right? Or they got a lot of power and a lot of be able to move the chess pieces. It's going to be this is where it gets funky here. Whereas Alabama and Texas and Florida State, all 4, it's like essentially, and you could throw Georgia in there, right?
Yeah, you needed Florida State to lose yesterday to make this a lot easier for yourself.
So you got 4 teams for 2 spots.
Yeah.
And the 4 teams are Georgia, which was number 1. And it'd be, I wouldn't say it would be historic that number 1 if they lost goes to outside of the.
But the fact they're back-to-back defending champs would be
the only
harder
to do it, right? And they won 29 games in a row. And then you have Alabama who beat them, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Florida State who won with their 3rd-team quarterback, which they look horrible.
Yeah,
the defense looked good, but there's a distinct difference between them. And then you got Texas, who probably, besides Michigan, I think Texas through the whole championship weekend, I would say they looked the best. They looked the best. The eye test, the way that, now granted, they were playing Oklahoma State, but I would say them and Washington, and then also Michigan looked the best.
Yeah.
At all. And Alabama. Those are the 4 teams that look the best. If I had to just say, okay, rank the teams, if I had to watch all the games, who were the best? I would say Michigan, Washington, Texas, Bama. That's who I would put in there.
Georgia's out, huh?
Georgia's out.
That's insane. Can you imagine? You win 29 games, you lose 1, and you're done.
Every season is different, and they have not looked good all year.
That's the one I don't feel good about, just tossing Georgia out of the top.
Yeah. You know what's going to really, I think I have a gentleman bet with friends.
Okay.
He thinks it's going to be monetary, but I think the libations was talking to him. Whatever. He says that Florida State's going to be in. I say it's going to be Bama. I say if Florida. Here's the bet we have: if Florida State went undefeated, which they did, would they get in? I said no, because of the quarterback being out, the number 1 quarterback being out. Now the backup will be back. I'm assuming that he'll be out of concussion protocol, and they have a 3rd-team quarterback, and so it's never been done before. Power 5 go undefeated. Only other undefeated not getting into it was Scott Frost led UCF, and he reminded me that they weren't Power 5, but I said they were. They had they had their own national championship parade. So Florida State, you know what I'm saying? You know what? Another reason is it's good that Georgia lost, so it's kind of like they didn't leapfrog Nebraska in the dominance. And then also, if Florida State doesn't get in, then it's payback for getting that fictitious national championship when William Floyd fumbled way back in '93.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
I got 0 problem if Florida State doesn't get in. That's the one team to me that
sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's crazy. The undefeated team in there looks like it don't belong.
Yeah, and
I'd rather have Ohio State in there than Florida State.
I look at the eye test doesn't fit it, the strength of schedule, but you can't fault Florida State of beating who is on their schedule. Now I think if Travis is healthy, then they're in because he's that much of a difference maker. He was a Heisman candidate. unfortunately had a season-ending injury. So it'll be interesting. But I'm gonna say my 4 that I'm trying to go with, or I would put in, is Michigan at number 1,
Mm-hmm.
Washington at number 2, Texas at number 3, Bama number 4. What do you think?
The Texas Bama's got me because do you penalize? Because the way they've worked on it before, those earlier games, they don't seem to penalize them as much.
Yeah.
But it is still a head-to-head.
Yeah.
And in that head-to-head, Texas beat Alabama.
Yeah. So they're in.
And
Texas is in.
Texas is in. Bama's is out.
No.
But that's impossible. You want to keep Bama after out.
You beat the number 1 team.
Yeah.
You beat the number 1 team.
I'm trying to find everything I can to keep Georgia in there. And Florida State needed to lose to kick them out.
Well, here's what I would say. I'll compromise.
But I need Washington in there too. Like Washington definitely belongs. Michigan definitely belongs.
Yeah,
those two are locked.
Locks. So Michigan, Washington, should be no question.
Yeah.
Number 3, I would say I'd be willing to fall on the sword of, say, Texas in there.
Okay.
So my 3 for 2 is this. It's essentially my 3. It's 3 for 2, but it's 2 for 2 spots. Texas in there, and then I have Bama/Georgia. So if you're not going to put Bama in because they're number 8, okay, that's fine. Pat them on the back, and then they'll go to the Rose Bowl and play probably Ohio State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good soft landing spot. You could say, okay, we that game I guarantee would be really good, and then they say that should have been in, right? Then you let the 2-time defending champ try to work their way up. And let's see what you made of, Michigan. Can you beat the team that beat the brakes off you every single time you play them in Georgia? Kirby Smart, can you do what you usually do? Lose the SEC championship when they have, and then take these 2 weeks to come out like a totally different team. And that's what I do. If Bama's not in, you throw Georgia in. By no means do I think Florida State should be in. And it's only because it will be giving the number 1 team, which would be Michigan, essentially a bye week to the championship game. Now, listen, we could also say we've seen this last year. We felt like the same way against TCU. And TCU, which obviously Coach Dykes knew that they were stealing signs, changed the game up to them, and they lit Michigan up like a Christmas tree. And the thing is, the scenario threw Michigan for such a loop. Michigan tried to play like TCU. They tried to throw it all around the yard, and you tried to get in a track meet against them. You had a first-round receiver out there, a Heisman candidate as a quarterback, and an opportunistic defense in TCU that was killing you in penetration and tackles for loss that made you go into a passing team. And then obviously Blake Corum wasn't there to be the kind of the tempo setter from conventional run game. So it kind of was a scenario perfect for TCU to beat Michigan. So there is a playbook of that, but then also we saw TCU in the championship game almost get beat by 80 points.
Yeah, this is the worst. I think it was overall just by the point margin alone.
And I think that butt kicking flowed into this year. That butt kicking, it was like when we used to play teams, Harrison, they'd be like, okay, you lose Nebraska this week, and then you lose the next week because physically you got to beat it. I think mentally getting embarrassed like that, and then obviously then you start the season thinking that, okay, we're going to play Colorado. Colorado had one of the worst rosters in the nation. Even the guys that they brought in, it wasn't like you were getting a whole bunch of 5 stars of guys that had been established to go there. You still expected TCU to win, and Colorado, pulled your pants down and spanked you in the butt too.
Yep.
And then it just flowed into the season. So, I guess I have my 5. I'll just throw 5 in there. It's like Bama/Georgia. I think one of them I could see where Georgia would be in, but I would probably take Bama. I felt like Bama beat them pretty handily. I felt like they were the better team.
I think you got to go off a more recent game.
And more recent,
what you're deciding.
Yeah. And they beat them in the champion. They're the SEC champion.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And there's no other person that St. Nick said, listen, surprise to Kirby, we're back. And the funny thing about it is, a little side note before we go to break. I had one of my best friends who coached me, his name Todd Grantham, was a senior assistant there at Bama. And we always talk just football, right? And he always just keep me up. His daughter plays Division I volleyball, and another son that plays baseball. So we always just talking just life. And he's a great coach. He actually was one of the coaches that recruited me out of high school when he was at Michigan State when he was coaching with Nick Saban or under Nick Saban. And he was like, hey, look, man, ever since they lost to Georgia last year, even though we won the bowl game, he said, we are focused on beating Georgia. And he said, listen, they said, Nick Saban said, listen, we're going to get back to straight up old school. He said, we're going to get some big linemen, and we're coming straight at you. And he's like, we got this big old quarterback. He's like, Jay, you would, he's like, I've never seen a quarterback this, like, he's like, Jay, he is like a gazelle, but built like a lion. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, come on, man. He's like, Jay, this dude is Cam Newton, but faster. He's like, he can go from zero, like first gear to fifth gear. And he's like, he's outrunning, because he was telling me about Dallas Turner. He's like, we got a really good pass rusher. You know, he's 4'4", 4'5" guy. He's like, he gets the edge on him all the time. He's like, I had to get after him all the time. And then sometimes when we get in coaches meeting, it was like, that this dude is just different. He's like, if he can learn to be a formidable passer, he's like, we'll be all right. And look at it, where they were the only team, even though Georgia, look, they lost a ton of first-round picks. You're going to see a lot of the guys that Georgia lost over the last couple of years play at 3:30 today against the 49ers. You got Jalen Carter, who was essentially the best guy in the draft last year.
Mm-hmm.
Just has a little bit of a lot of lead foot as far as speeding. And then you got Jordan Davis, and then you got Neal, the linebacker, and then they have the other Nixon, I think, the outside linebacker / DN that ran a 4.3 at 245. All those dudes were at Georgia, so they never got pushed around. Alabama was the only team, even though Georgia hadn't looked really good this year, Alabama pushed them around physically. And so that's a little scenario, man. It's like everybody, it's like I keep looking over the clock because we're about to go to break. I'm going to keep looking at the clock to see when you hear some things coming out.
Probably hear the leaks coming around
10 o'clock.
11.
Yeah,
because we'll start to get the final answer.
If they have the college football playoff show at 11 Central Time, 12 Eastern Standard Time, you're going to start hearing stuff about 10:15 because they'll have people that'll just.
Some people will know what the decision is.
Yeah, because you'll have reporters down there that'll
weeks.
be outside of the meeting room that have personal relationships with people. They won't say who it is, and they'll say, okay, this is what the committee's thinking. They're not getting on TV and say this is what the committee's thinking without getting some intimate knowledge on what it's at. So it'll be interesting to see championship weekend. Excited to see this last one before we get in the tournament of 12, and then there'll be a lot more to talk about and different scenarios, because then it will be how you navigate your season based on trying to be the final 12. And that will be a big, huge difference as well. So I'm going to go to break. Inside the Huddle, Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. We'll be right back and put a bow on this Inside the Huddle, championship weekend style. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
I'm Christy. I used to smoke cigarettes. I had smoker's cough and severe shortness of breath, and I knew I had to quit. Then I tried e-cigarettes, but I just ended up using both. I really didn't start to get better until I quit smoking completely. My tip to you is just cutting down on the number of cigarettes you smoke isn't enough.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
I'm Sergeant Jones with the Nebraska State Patrol. Driving drunk puts everyone on the road at risk. In Nebraska, over 30% of all roadway fatalities occur in alcohol-related crashes, and every one of those could have been prevented. The decision to give your keys to a sober driver could be the decision that prevents a roadway tragedy. Help keep Nebraska roads safe and always drive sober. This message is presented by the Nebraska State Patrol and the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Joel Norman, the voice of your Lincoln Stars hockey team. Tune in to 93.7 The Ticket every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. to hear the latest on the Stars with myself, head coach Rocky Russo, and special player guests.
I'm Chris Jakovic. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, "My job is people, everyone is my business." But unfortunately, in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakovic, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and text us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
What up? We're back. Inside the Huddle. Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Championship weekend. We're all into anticipation. Hopefully, one of the things, Harris, I wanted to also give props to one of my best friends and former teammates, Jason Peter. He came in on Friday. We have this deal. I think I'm the one that said it to him, but we're definitely 100%. I don't ever like to speak for anybody, but we're definitely in 100% agreement. I'm 47. I don't know. I think Jason might be 48. Or I know he's older than me, so he might be 48, 49. I don't want to date him. We have this thing that by the time that we reach, I didn't know AARP starts at 50, but I thought it starts at 63 and a half, No,
that's as soon as you get to the top of the hill.
Yeah. So 60. By the time we're 63 years old, I think that's where they send you off to the pasture. Dude, we don't need you. We don't need you doing anything. I was like, my goal is obviously being good enough health and being good health that we're able to get on a plane and whatever conference that we're in Nebraska's in the championship game, and we get off the plane thinking, knowing and hoping that there's above 60% chance that we can win that championship game. Just once as a former player. So that's what I think about every championship weekend. Just one time before I kick the bucket. Then I'll be like, all right, I'm good.
I got to go to YouTube for that. I don't even got any live countings of it.
Yeah, I know, man. It's, I don't consider myself a media person, but just I guess whatever you want to call it. As a former player, you always have to understand and respect what we did, and I don't expect them to do the same. You know what I mean? So this whole people's like, oh, it's not the not the 90s and all that.
I'm asking for 6 though, not
that's what people don't understand. I don't expect that because it's never been done before. The closest thing is Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Alabama at certain times, and then the Miami. So we're not asking you to recreate college football and sports history. I think it was an easy excuse for like past coaches. I know, like, you know, Bo Pelini was very like, and his players were very like vocal about it and all this other stuff. That wasn't it. And yes, their expectation, but here's what I would tell Bo if we were having a beer. You got here because of those championships, dude. That's how you got your paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So pump the brakes on that. I can speak for a majority of the players, especially the defensive players. What we look for is just the unique qualities that we knew that we established that are portable from, and that we had to live up to from the guys that played before us. Like, so those guys like Broderick Thomas and those guys in the 80s and Neil Smith and those guys in probably 70s with Glover. It didn't matter. You shut up, you show up, you play hard, you play for something bigger than yourself, and you play team football and you be physical and all that stuff. That has nothing to do with 90s. And so, but I think they're getting back to it, and expectations are being there. So, again, championship weekend is always fun. And it's even better that this college football committee that had it pretty easy. It always kind of worked out for them. You know what I mean? It always kind of worked out. Somebody would stub their toe, or, you know, it would just win. It would just work out that way. It was like the year that Alabama beat Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew that Georgia would still be in, and Alabama needed to beat Georgia to get in. Then you had to, then they played again. Georgia pushed through and won a championship. It always just kind of worked out. There wasn't much questions. I'm telling you, the bags under those gentlemen's eyes, and being up, and the amount of coffee that they probably had to consume, and room service or whatever they were getting. It's probably like a jury in a huge trial, because it's a.
What's the committee made out of? Former players, and
it's like former coaches, some of the ADs and some players. I don't think any players are there, but it changes every year.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so I don't even really pay attention who's on there. It's just tough because
I'm sure they're sweating last night.
Yeah, and they're getting phone calls from people especially from Georgia and Alabama, and people in the SEC. You know, it's Greg Sankey's like, listen, dog, we are rightfully so. They're college football, but then on the other hand, is you could, as a football championship committee, set the tone where, like, you're not just going to be a foregone conclusion that one of your teams is going to get in.
Is there any chance there's no SEC team?
I think there's a chance. I guess if you want to create total chaos and send Jim Harbaugh off and Michigan wins the national championship, this would be it. You know, I always think, like, is there a scenario where Michigan wins and they're just like, okay, you won a national championship, now you need to leave to go to the pros? You know what I'm saying? I think
they headed to Chicago. It sounds.
No, I don't think Kevin Warren's going to have that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Dallas. If the
this year,
the Cowboys can cowboy still.
Okay,
so if Mike McCarthy, if they cowboy up, like people say, cowboy up, I could see him being gone. So, anyways, good championship show. Appreciate Harrison meeting me on this early brisk morning. Got the little frost on the trees out here, but the sun is trying to peek itself out. But Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Appreciate their support and help. We're turning it over to Pete Ferguson here, and he always has a great show. I always enjoy listening to him on the way home. But we will be back next week. We are out. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
The dangers of secondhand smoke are well known. But what about secondhand aerosol, which is created when using e-cigarettes? Science already shows a secondhand aerosol can contain nicotine, heavy metals, and cancer-causing agents. Eliminating exposure to secondhand aerosol is an important step to keeping everyone safe. Breathe easier knowing the facts.
For help quitting, call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Everything we do, from our jobs to our hobbies, to the stuff that makes us who we are, all of those things come with the tool of the trade. I'm Trooper